Well, hello there, and welcome to Prolix Comix Bollix, the show where myself, Nick, and himself up there with those two issues of Gutter Hunter, Clive,
hello,
talk at length, ad nauseum, about comics. And today we have an extremely special guest, who is the, well, famous, maybe mostly famous up until recently for Cinema Sewer. And now famous for Gutter Hunter, which is what we're here to talk about today. But would you like to introduce yourself there, special guest?
Hey, I'm Robin Bougie, and yeah, I'm a smut peddler.
Excellent. We're off to a good start. So I would have met Robin many, many years ago when I would have been living in Victoria. And I was a university student there and dabbling in not very good comics. And so Robin was a kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi of the comic scene, ready there to mentor people and just be generally kind and awesome and have them over to his house. And some other folks around the time, Ed Brisson, who was a university and late high school university friend of mine, who now works for Marvel Comics, which is, it just shows you that if you don't give up and you bankrupt yourself at 18, which he did, publishing a comic.
We were all small press guys back then, you know, just self-publishing and just taking our comics around to different comic stores, and you guys were doing it and I was doing it, and just you know, getting on the photocopier and photocopying up, you know, whatever, how many copies, and sharing them with your friends. And yeah, that's how I guess everybody gets their start, when at least that's the way they did it back then. I guess now you have a blog or a website.
Yes, I sadly have never transitioned onto. I still don't even know how a tablet works in terms of drawing and stuff like that. It's all a mystery to me. But whenever the few times I do sit down to draw, it's always with a pencil and a pen or a brush.
I still draw. Yeah, I still draw manually with a brush and stuff. But then I scan everything in, and I like to kind of alter things, or I still actually color with markers and pencil crayons, and but I really like doing like dot tones and adding different effects and stuff with Photoshop. So I have kind of upped my game a little bit. I'm not a complete Luddite, but I like the hands-on feel of working with paper and pens. And
there's something really tactile about
the hand printing as well, which is something that carries on over from Cinema Sewer, and reminds me a little bit as well of the very early New York City only issues of Psychotronic Video that Michael J. Weldon did, and they were all kind of, you know, painfully all written out in, you know, very deliberate type. And obviously it takes time to do things that way, but it has an aesthetic which is pleasing. I call it like the old school zine aesthetic. Sleazewood Express was also you know, one of the handmade ones, and but I have actually utilized a font made out of my lettering as well, so I do that a lot as well.
Okay, that's genius.
Yeah, well, so I had a friend who showed me how to make a font out of my lettering, and it was pretty easy. I've made 3 or 4 different ones over the years, and I would say I use the font about 60-70% of the time, so for the last like 5 or 6 years, or maybe longer even.
So you can type it?
Yeah, I type. Well, you know, I have to type everything out anyway because I have to spell check everything. So even if I'm hand lettering, I still type everything out. So just so I can formulate my thoughts and, you know, move paragraphs around and stuff and just get everything the way I want it. So I've always typed out everything anyway, so it's not like but if I know I'm going to be doing a big block of text and I don't have to like curve my lettering around anything, I'll just generally, it just shaves my arm. You know, as you get older, I'm almost 50 now, and I have developed.
Turned 47 myself.
Hey, all right.
Good times.
And I developed an RSI injury in my arm from drawing and lettering and stuff. So anything I can do to kind of preserve my arm so that I can draw longer as I get older, it would be silly not to. So. And 99% of the time, people can't tell the difference between the font and my lettering anyway. So
no, I would as the only 25-year-old here on podcast, I had no idea. I couldn't tell. So,
but
I fooled you all.
I have a quick question then. So, like, did you come up with like multiple T's and multiple H's so that they wouldn't repeat. Yeah. Okay. So that you kind of, it's an algorithm almost where, yeah. Okay.
And if I see anything,
that's why it's undetectable to the eye.
If I see, and also if I see anything in it, like to my eye, where I'm like, oh, I'm seeing it looks a little bit like a computer did this, I'll just go in and white out stuff and then just hand letter those bits.
Okay.
So I go over everything and then I want it to look handmade. So yeah.
So hang on, going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but this is kind of fascinating. So I'm assuming you've set that up in a way that when you hit a regular keyboard, so does it automatically randomize the different kinds
No.
of?
I set it up so that caps lock, so a capitalized version and because everything I do is capitalized. Everything's all caps anyway.
Mhm.
So if I want to change, say I've got a T, I'll just hit caps lock for the second T and it'll make a different T.
Ah,
Cool.
Yeah.
oh, that's
But
quite
I also
clever,
remember
then.
thinking, like in looking at like even like that's something that always it almost gives me vertigo, like in that way that you remember what's his name who did Hard Boiled with Frank Miller,
Jeff Darrow.
Yeah. The first time I saw that stuff when I was a teenager, I was just like, what? Like just that intense detail, just like I love it. But it also freaks me right out.
That back cover took 6 days to ink. So.
Yeah, it looks like it took 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying to somebody who has some sense of what goes into these things.
It's fun though. I quite like looking up the titles as well and trying to figure out which ones. I mean, there's easy ones, obviously, like Mad, but then other ones. Is Plopsy Pete a real comic, or is that one you?
It's mine.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
It's actually a comic back from the era when I knew Nick and we were drawing. So.
Okay, well that brings me. So we are here to specifically promote Get the Hunter because it's definitely worth it. But I would like to do a little bit of background because I am the one here as well. I'm not the massive big comics guy. I haven't made comics. I haven't really come back to reading comics until relatively recently. So this is going to be a steep learning curve for me. But also I'm quite interested in, so via Cinema Sewer and now Get the Hunter, obviously you're using your own comics and you're drawing your own comics, but it's in a very meta kind of way, right? And in the second issue of Get the Hunter, there's some stuff from Deviant, number one of your. So I was kind of, yeah, there we go. I'm kind of interested at like, is this just a split in my head and it's not in your head? But it seems to be almost a divide of like you're doing your own comics, and then it's more of a talking about comics in the comics.
The journalism side of things.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, did one stop when the other one begin, or have you still been continuing? Because I don't know, I'm not massively immersed in the world of comics, or like how did it begin? What did you start doing first? Like what's the early work of Robin Bougie, and how does it become Cinema Sewer and Get the Hunter?
Well, I'm a comics guy from that sort of got interested in movies. So my earliest years, that was really all I cared about was comics, reading comics, drawing comics. And then I got into kind of the zine years. I started making more things that were like not just comics. And that's when I did the first issue of Cinema Sewer. The first Cinema Sewer actually began as a column for somebody else's zine. And that only lasted one issue. But I had so much fun writing about movies for the very first time that I was like, oh, that was fun. Maybe I should make my own zine, about. So it was actually, that's how Cinema Sewer came around. And then all the way through Cinema Sewer, I've always used comics and to talk about movies. So it only made sense when I was starting up, a zine about comics to use comics to talk about comics. So it seems almost kind of ridiculous to use any other medium to talk about comics than the comics. So using comics as journalism is something that's it's had a storied history. There's been a lot of people who have done it. I'm not the first one for sure. Guys like Joe Sacco or there's lots of them. But
Scott McCloud's big book
Scott
of
McCloud.
comics done in comics form.
Yeah, and it's I think there's room there to do even more. And I've been finding that with Gutter Hunter. I was really inspired by Kayla Janice's book, House of Psychotic Women, where she really is. That's something it's a book that has been inspiring, I think, for a lot of people. The way she kind of uses her own story of her own life to talk about movies. And that's something I've always dabbled a little bit in CinemaSeur, but I wanted to kind of up it up even more with Gutter Hunter. And really, as much as I'm reviewing comics, I want to review my relationship with comics and the way, you know, they've affected my life, and using comics to talk about myself. That's why I've always talked about CinemaSeur saying like it's I want it to read like a letter from a friend, and less like a something created by a committee or a corporation. And I think that's, you know, that's the world of zines for you, right? I'm just taking that and I'm holding that mantle and I'm kind of carrying it.
So here's sorry, this is going to jump around a lot because obviously you're going to say things and then that triggers, because I have things written down, but you just triggered a question in me there. So I write about films, right? That's what I do. And in my case, and I sense, because I'm a big fan of your graphic thrills books, we'll mention those as well. But in my case, especially in recent years, like when I was younger, I was like, I will review the world, you know, I'll you know, and then you kind of run out, you're like, I genuinely don't have anything to say about the new Marvel film, or, you know, it's not, but I'm still fascinated by...
This is the first volume of Clive's like doorstopper spine kind of book, which is also terrifyingly huge and comprehensive, and is part one.
Wow. So anyway, so it's like now I can only write about stuff that sends me down rabbit holes of recent, like if I'm just watching something and it's just nothing against mainstream movies, I can enjoy them, but if there's nothing that inspires me to go digging and looking things up, and I'm not engaging with it creatively, so therefore I tend to give that stuff a miss now. So I was just curious, now that you've switched to Gutter Hunter, so you're not necessarily writing about films so much, are you still obsessed with films, or has that gone off the boil because you're not engaging with them directly, writing a zine about them? Are you still enjoying watching films and discovering new films as much, or? Yeah,
I mean, my three kind of things that I get really, really obsessive about in terms of, well, four things that I get really obsessed about with pop culture I've always been, even all the way through the 25 years of doing CinemaSeur, it's always been fairly equal. It's just that CinemaSeur was where my creative outlet was. But
okay,
when I'm taking in media, it's music, it's comics, it's movies, and it's smut history. And so those four things, like, even if I'm only writing about one of them, I'm still taking in all of them almost equally.
Okay.
So yeah.
Do you have an outlet for what I mean is, do you have, because I think if I didn't have an outlet for it, I get clogged up, and therefore it becomes slightly less.
Well, I've found ways to sort of implement it. Like if you go back through issues of CinemaSeur, you'll see, oh, there's whole sections where I'm talking about music. But I've just found ways to tie it to film, like, oh, soundtracks, or, oh, here's a person who, I'm trying to think of examples, but you'll find it all the way through there. Or like, I'll have used comics, like, oh, here's a movie a comic book I really wish had become a movie, or, I'll find ways to sort of tie it together.
So do you think movies might occasionally rear their ugly head in future issues of Gutter Hunter here and there?
I've noticed it already. Yeah,
there's
little bits of it here and there, and I'm sure you'll see it showing up.
Even
I'll find ways to tie it.
There's an interview where you referenced the Beyond. I was like, that's it's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's that kind of choppy, dream-like thing, and which is I love. The Beyond is still what I saw that actually when one of the Cinema Muerte festivals, they brought in quite a nice print of it, and I was like, ooh, big screen, full sheet.
I think I was there that night. Yeah,
you jump on those things when you can.
Yeah.
I was so sad I wasn't there the following year. I'd moved to Japan the following year when John Saxon showed up, and our mutual friend Ed sent me a photograph of him and John Saxon at a barbecue with a sign that said "Nick sucks." They were both holding it together, and it's one of my prized possessions to this day. I just showed it to my grade 6 kids. I was like, this guy was in, like, the only context they might have would be Enter the Dragon. I wasn't going to be like, this guy was in a lot of great Thomas Millian you know, crime films from Italy with Maurizio Merli, but some of them were like, oh, is that Bruce Lee? And then I was like, yeah, that's Bruce Lee, and that's John Saxon.
That same visit with John Saxon, I cornered him in the lobby, and I had found this 1950s Philippines movie magazine. It had pictures of like North American movie stars, and it was John Saxon when he was like a teenager in like 1959 or 62 or something like that. And so it was like this really vintage colorized photo, and I was like, oh, I was thinking, oh, he's going to think this is so cool to sign this, and he barely even looked at it, and he just did what of all the signatures I've ever gotten from celebrities, he gave me the worst signature I've ever seen. like it just like didn't even look anything like his, and he kind of went back and he did it wrong and restarted it, and like it looks so ugly, and I'm like, I kind of wish the picture wasn't signed now.
Who knows? I mean,
ruined my magazine.
If it's the Philippines, I'm wondering if it brought back bad. Who knows? There might have been a time in history where he was like neck and neck with John Ashley or something, like who was going to conquer the Philippines, and he lost. Still bitter about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so pre-Cinema Sewer then, pre the journalism, there's what is there other than Deviant? Are there some other titles that and are you proud of them? Rather the world wouldn't see them anymore, or it's a mixed bag?
When I first started self-publishing, the biggest thing in the world of indie comics was autobio.
Right.
So I got right on the autobio train, and I did all autobio comics. And if I made a trip to the thrift store, I did a comic about what I found at the thrift store that day. It was all just like journal comics, and that's what everybody was doing, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, this would have been pretty important in the moment.
Okay.
Same era, yeah, exactly. Early '90s, mid '90s. That's
we were all doing it. That's what that nicotine fellow was doing as well. I think it was pretty big. It still is. I still really enjoy reading comics that are written from personal experience, and that particularly about things that, like, because sometimes you'll see comics about things that just nobody writes about. You know, like just like day-to-day drudgery, or even there was zines, like there was Dishwasher zine.
I love
things
Dishwasher.
Like that, just like people just, this is what real life is for a lot of people, and yet, particularly television gives us like 3 jobs. You could be a cop, you can be a doctor,
exactly,
and there's like maybe one other job you can be, and that's it. And then, but there's all of this other.
In the second issue as well, I'm thinking particularly of the interview with JB in terms of really kind of putting herself on the page.
Well, yeah. There's like a
no
confession
at all
at a level where.
That's really why I wanted to talk to him, because he's always been so brutally honest about his life in his paper and the work that he gets down on paper. And that's why I wasn't shy to ask him really personal questions, because I'm like, oh, this is a guy that can take it. He's not going to be offended. And that's why I really wanted to interview. And also, no one's ever interviewed him. So I was like, those are the kind of people I want to talk to in Gutter Hunter. Like, I think you may have seen, I mentioned at the beginning, I think, of one of the issues where I'm like, if this comic has won, awards, I'm probably not going to cover it in here, because I'm not because, I don't, I just want to kind of focus on things that there's so much amazing work out there that's just never gotten any attention in the world of indie comics, particularly.
Well, that's what I like. I like the iceberg as well. The iceberg illustration.
Yes.
Right. and it's true that, I mean, even if you're only talking English language stuff, but if you take into
when I moved to Japan and I walked into manga stores in Tokyo and was just like, oh my god,
I can only imagine. Yeah,
the realization that such a tiny fraction of stuff, and even from big names, people that I was excited about, like the old Nagai Go stuff or Matsumoto Leiji, even then at that point virtually none of it was available in English.
Exactly.
It's slowly starting to now appear, but a lot of it we'll never see. And particularly, again, those weirdo things like the really intense comic about the guy who builds frames for houses or whatever. He's like, because in Japan, it was all open for comics. Like, it didn't matter how niche or esoteric it was, or tons of comics about the best ramen chefs and stuff. And I think that's one thing that maybe it's too bad that Western comics, maybe not European so much, but North American comics, there's not a lot of that. There's not a lot of those kind of comics about everyday jobs and everyday life,
But that's what I No, go
So
ahead.
even to this day, if I tell people I do comics, they just assume I do superhero comics.
Right. Yeah.
So that's like a weird assumption that people. I mean, you would think at this point there's been so much content that's not superhero comics that no, that's still the average person's kind of idea of what a comic is. So.
That's what I dig about Gutter Hunter in general, and we'll get more into specific examples. But the main thing is that there's not really much superheroes into, which is great for me because I've never, like I said, maybe because I did get into comics as a kid, but for whatever reason they went by the wayside a little bit and came back. I've never, maybe because my introduction was stuff like 2000 AD, which seemed like already one step further along.
Well, I like that Clive was pretending that his introduction to comics wasn't the Beano and the Dandy.
Oh yes,
and all of that stuff that all of us who grew up on that side of the pond.
But somehow
that was our introduction to comics.
That's true. But then I jumped the superhero phase for some reason and went straight for the 2000 ADs and stuff. But
that's funny because for me, I would have gone into things like DC and Marvel as a result of some of that talent from 2000 AD, those Alan Moores and those.
Right. Well, that's when I checked out, you see. So
right.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of them who went off to work for either Epic or what became Vertigo. Neil Gaiman and all of those people, they all started with 2000 AD and then wound up,
I don't dislike superhero comics, just to get that out there. I don't. It's not like I'm.
I don't either.
It's not snobby about everything. I actually buy lots of superhero comics, but it's just I just think there's just so much room for so much more.
Exactly.
And it's just a sort of a shame that people don't realize, that there is so much more out there. So that's kind of me. I'm just doing my small bit to let people know. And
I can relate because it's the same thing with the movie. It's not that I dislike those major movies, but not enough people are watching obscure ninja films from the 80s with Richard Harrison, and that's these things need to be talking about more.
Guys that have to have ninja written across their headbands. Yes.
With a Garfield phone.
Yeah.
You've got to have a Garfield phone.
But one of the things is really exciting about reading this is it just brings back the memories of that weird window, that weird time of all those black and white indie comics, all those little fly-by-night publishers that might only have done one or two things, or those, and then it comes up kind of, how everyone has that comic that was the one that they were like, yes, I could do better than this, and we couldn't, is what we discovered. But this was what it was for me and Ed.
Wow.
It was a comic called Magistrate.
Wow.
Which came out of
so that was your no UFO. That was mine.
Yes, this came out of Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, 1992. And this was Ed found this somewhere and and was like, we could do better than this.
We could do this. We could do this.
And
I don't know if you're familiar.
We didn't do any better. We probably did exactly about as bad as this is, which is good. You need to learn that early, that your plans so I've enjoyed that reading, like how everyone has these plans when they're 18 or 19 of like, yes, this is the first step in my multimedia empire. Once this goes huge, once we're the next Eastman and Laird, and we have our Saturday morning cartoon show and our series of Hollywood options and stuff like that.
Those big dreams. That's your power pill that gets you. That sends you off on your
sitting in Denny's. So you can stay up all night, scratching at the drawing board, and
you have to be a little bit stupid and blind in order to go and do it.
Are you familiar, Robin, with the website Stupid Comics at all?
Yeah.
And there's some stuff in there as well occasionally where they dig up indie comics from the 90s, and some of those, there's some fascinating, and there's a few in the first two issues of Gutter Hunter as well. But it was something, as someone who wasn't there at the time, that's a real window into something that I wasn't aware of at all. And some of them are akin to something like an Ed Wood film, where you just have to adjust. It's a differently abled comic rather than a bad comic, right?
I'm glad to think that I was involved in creating some differently abled comics.
Well, you haven't let me read any of yours, Nick.
No. I even tried to find hardcore comics stuff first, which is great because it was immediately misunderstood as being a porn comic. We hadn't thought that through, evidently. So
bad name.
Like, we don't want
bad
that in
name.
the store.
Bad name.
Anyway,
I'm glad you mentioned porn, because that's the other. So when does porn and smut enter the equation then, Robin? Because that's clearly an important component?
Well, that came when I started doing CinemaSeur, and I realized, 2 or 3 issues into CinemaSeur, that every single movie zine that exists is focused on horror movies. So am I going to make one more horror movie zine and just be, a drop in an ocean or am I going to try to find my own angle? And I didn't see anybody talking about vintage smut, and there's like all these incredible actors and performers and directors that have like an incredible filmography. A lot of it is, a lot of it's terrible, but a lot of it's actually pretty interesting stuff, and is actually interesting even over and above, how big it makes your boner.
Right.
I can remember, I'm pretty sure that the first place I ever saw the Proto Meet the Feebles, Damiano's, it's Damiano, right, who did
Let My Puppets Come.
Yes, that was at your house for sure.
Oh yeah, I think it was.
You are slightly painting Robin as the dodgy, slightly older fellow in your neighborhood who invited young teenage boys.
Well, first of all, Robin's like 2 years older than me, so I don't think
the dodgy old man. Come on in.
Yeah.
Let me stroke your hair, Nick. Oh, me bonny boy.
Are you having flashbacks, Nick? Are you all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll be all right.
Okay.
But yeah, not the impression I intended to give. I was a more than willing participant in whatever went on.
Well, that's how gaslighting works.
Anyhow, I will say that one of the things that I really enjoyed, because what's exciting to me about reading this is that I'm realizing that there's people who I might have seen their work and I didn't know who they were, or I didn't realize how important they were, or I didn't put the connection together. And one of the people was Sean Carey, like this article about her work for cartoons, and that's where I would have seen, I think, her work, but not realizing that she's also the person who designed the circle jerks. That overlap between two things that I love intensely, which is 1980s hardcore and just comics. Like just what an amazing person, and quite as so many comics stories seem to end kind of in tragedy, right? So many of my favorite people ended up for one reason or another. It's a hard life, and I think it always has been. I think people just work themselves to death, or need to find ways to get through, and we can't all be Lemmy. We can't all just constantly do speed and not die at 40.
To this day, I'll talk to people who love comics, and they'll ask, and we'll be talking about, your favorite female comic artist, and like, I'm like, how she never gets mentioned. And that was really starting to, that's why I was like, as soon as I do a zine about comics, I'm doing an article about Sean Carey, because she has her little fan base in the punk scene, because, they if you know punk art from LA, the LA punk scene, and so you would know her cartooning. But even then, a lot of times people just know the cartoon, they don't know who did it.
Yeah,
they're often shocked to find out that it was a woman that did it.
Well, that's the other crossover that's interesting as well, is the one that between people who do comics but also do other sort of graphic design as well, and people don't necessarily put it all together, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But I've talked to so many people who are experts, like comic book historians, who didn't know who the hell she was. So.
Yeah, which is an absolute shame. So it's awesome that I said that's what's, I think, the most exciting thing is every time I get a new issue. And these seem to, like, for me, I know maybe because it was the second printing of this, but these seem to come out really close together. I was like, whoa, there's another one already? How is Robin possibly doing this? Like, what the hell? Or did he have 2 in the can ready to go? Like,
well, I think the clue is here, right? It's the compulsion, right?
Well, was dealing with a lot of things between these 2 issues. Of course, COVID, and my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
Rebecca,
So I was, in order to keep from getting depressed and keep from just, spiraling, and it made me extremely motivated to get work done. So I actually worked at a faster pace and a more I've put in a lot of hours at the studio, and more than I do usually. So that's why there was a pretty small window between the 2.
Right. So for anybody who doesn't know, it's worth noting that Rebecca Dart, who Robin is lucky enough to be married to, is one of the most gifted artists I've ever met. Just truly an astonishing talent, and I've always been in awe of everything that she does. So
yeah, she works in animation, and she's a big dinosaur nerd. She loves drawing dinosaurs.
And I love the comics of the Valkyries riding giant fluffy cats.
The battle kittens, yeah.
Those are amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, we were talking about how those two issues seem to come almost on top of each other, and I was really excited. But what do you think the actual pace will be, or will it just be it'll just be dictated by how quickly you can work?
My plan is to make it annual. So
okay.
Yeah.
So it's only if you have an injection of tragedy in your life, then you might.
yeah.
Okay.
You'll know things are bad if it's coming out monthly.
Every 2 weeks.
That puts me in a
Let's have an intervention.
position between hoping for more issues of Gutter and then I'm not.
I don't know how to feel now.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, my cat had a stroke this week, and one of my friends committed suicide. So maybe there'll be a new issue real soon.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry.
Silver line.
I lost a student of mine, which I always knew there was a chance of happening if you teach long enough that you're going to lose one of your kids to suicide, and it happened just a few weeks ago as well. And it's always an absolute kick in the solar plexus, and
almost exactly when Andrew died.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome back to the Cheerful Comics podcast.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. You know what, everyone? Mental health is really important.
I just like being real, baby. I got to be real.
Take care of yourselves, please.
Yeah.
Get help if you need it.
It's important.
It's really important.
Especially if what you're both saying is there's a a lot of people who draw comics seem to be total mentalists, right? It seems to be a thing.
Yeah. I mean, either it's like it's that intense myopic focus, but then you just burn yourself out, or life is tough, or the Falls. Plastic Man, right? Jack Cole.
Elastic Man.
Yeah. Jack Cole didn't have a great end.
Yeah.
Wally Wood didn't have a great end. A lot of the greats
don't have
great ends,
Yeah.
I assume Eastman and Laird will be fine, bastards. But anyways, I guess jumping back to that, there was that period of time when it was just seemed like you couldn't turn around without finding another new weird black and white comic. And one of my favorites, just in terms of like, there was this huge glut of like adolescent radioactive hamster, whatever, kind of comics.
Yeah.
But there was, can I find it in my pile? There was one that was like, spoke to me in a couple of different ways. It was the Bushido blade of Zatoichi Walrus.
There was so many of those, dude. There was so many of them.
Yeah. This. What? I mean, I'm a big fan of.
Of course, it's Solson Publications, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
It is. I see the little logo.
Yeah, Solson. Yeah, Solson.
Yeah.
What else did they do? I guess here we go.
Oh, a lot of shit.
Codename Ninja.
Is there? You might specifically know the answer to this, Nick. I know there's always been a lot of activity in underground zines and comics in the UK as well. But is it anywhere near the amount that's come out of North America in general, or is it less kind of reported on, or like?
I feel like we could refer ourselves to Gutter Hunter for that. There's a great interview with somebody I didn't know and I never met, which is weird because he was another Irishman, evidently at some point living and doing comics in Vancouver. But the
after your time,
Philip Barrett. I mean, he kind of talks about going back to leaving Ireland at a time when there really wasn't much going on, and coming back and finding that there had been a kind of a little renaissance. So I'm guessing that probably the same thing would have been happening in England around the same time in Wales, that there would have been more. And again, I think there would have been some influence from those Joe Matts and Chester Browns and those people whose comics would have finally been filtering over to that side of the world. And people would be like, oh yeah, we can do other things with comics. We don't just have to do a Batman clone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that leads me as well to the I mean, there's a lot in both of these, but the stuff that really jumps, the stuff that really gets me excited are the Euro comics.
I knew that Pig was going to be very important.
Pig, yeah. I mean,
I love Pigs so much, dude.
It's amazing. Also, the Eyes of Jade and Bionica look fantastic.
Yeah.
But Pig, from what I can tell from your article as well, someone's put up subtitled scans.
Fan subs, yeah.
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 So I'm keen to get.
The thing with those comics, those LV France and those they were published under several different publishers, but depending which country. But the only thing of them that has appeared in English are book collections of cover art.
Right.
I think under the title Sex and Violence series.
Sex and Horror.
Sex and Horror, that's it. So that's really the only thing and there's mountains of these comics, and North American or English speaking readers have almost no clue of their existence. And like the 3 that I've talked about in the first 2 issues are it's just scraping the very edge. Like there's literally thousands of series, not just issues, but thousands of series.
Yeah.
Like there's so many of them, and nobody I know who speaks English exclusively even knows that they exist. So, and a lot of them have never been translated, and that's why. But they're incredible comics.
These articles came along at the perfect time for me, because I've been getting into that stuff ever so slowly myself, as I became aware of it through like those Sex and Horror volumes, for example. And I was like, what the heck? What? I need more. I need more. It's like it's real junky stuff, right? It's like, yes, give me more. I need to mainline this stuff. So I was so excited
to see those books, because I had a bunch of these comics that I bought on eBay about a dozen years ago. And that's how I found them, just completely by accident. Somebody was selling some. I couldn't read them, but I bought them because they had those cool, amazing painted covers. And I had no clue what they were going to be. They showed up and I was like, well, I can't really read this. And they're sort of like, some of them, the ones I got were pretty shitty, like very hastily drawn. Although I did notice, had some very early Milo Manera. He cut his teeth. And so but I mean, they must have had just the shortest turnaround times. Like their deadlines must have been insane, because it looked like Milo Manera if he was drawing, like if he had to do 10 pages a day or something. Like it was just so quickly, hastily drawn out. But yeah, and then I never saw anybody talk about them. I kind of put them on the shelf and didn't really think about them too much, and I didn't put any real research into them. I did end up using the covers for one of them for the very first volume of Retardotron, which was a mixtape DVD series I did with my friend Roel from Holland. He edited and I compiled, and we did use several different things for covers, but one of these was like, I just basically swiped the cover from one of these comics, because I was like, no one's gonna have ever seen this before.
Well, just as a tangent, what kind of stuff was on the Retardotron?
Well, if you're kind of aware of mixtape culture, especially as it existed in the 90s, we would trade VHS tapes back and forth through the mail. This was pre-internet, pre-YouTube, and just the weirdest shit you could find, the better. It would just be like failed TV pilots, kind of faces of death stuff. Sometimes there'd be weird porn from around the world, Japanese porn, or just the. I mean, the word mixtape really kind of brings up, and then as we kind of got into like the internet age, it became even easier to find a lot of this stuff. So we did a series of DVDs that were Rule did a really good job editing them, and they're I don't want to say they're legendary, but they're well thought of in mixtape culture. So
interesting.
I do remember years. So at this point, my friend Brian Clement, who made a couple of zombie movies that I was in, and I wrote part of the first one anyway, which then when I moved to Japan discovered was on the shelves of Tsutaya, which was very weird.
Wow.
And actually I am a much better actor when I'm dubbed into Japanese by somebody who can actually act. I was like, oh, this is the way I should always be presented, with subtitles and a voice stuff. But
yes, we did.
But anyway,
Meet Market, see earlier podcast for details.
Yes. But anyway, when Brian, when I first met him, I'd just come back from teaching for a year in Japan, and he had brought all of these tapes. And at that point, Japanese TV seemed a bit more outre, if that's how you say that word.
Not anymore, unfortunately.
Than it is now. And so he had those things like Stamp. That's where I saw, and I think I passed it on to you, like the one where they roll the dice. and smack a guy in the face with a giant fan.
Dude, we've watched that tape. So we actually, some of that stamp show ended up on one of the Retardictron tapes.
I thought it might have.
Thanks to you. Yeah,
I have some of those, and I was like, I think, yeah, you guys repurposed that footage, which was great because I've never seen it anywhere else.
I watched that tape that you gave me so many times. I have parts of it memorized to this day. Like
there was a Gimme Gimme Octopus whole parody thing.
I love
there was one where guys were shooting fireworks into a guy who's sitting in a toilet stall. Well, basically, it was all those man's eye guys. I mean, you would recognize. And then there was one called Poker Face, which was like a bunch of guys sitting along like a bar while one of them's being kind of like violated by a dominatrix, and they have to try to like like all keep a poker face, and then it's clear that this guy's looking really uncomfortable, but the guy won't he won't give away that he knows who it is. Like it just goes on and on. Just great stuff that they don't do on Japanese TV anymore.
Has become part of me and my wife's personal lexicon as well over the years. Like anytime you want something handed over, you're like kore.
Well, I have lines from stamps. So I remember lines like, "Oh, his nose flew so beautifully," or like "Bonano," or the other one where he goes, "Go to Hokkaido for egg yolk."
Clive has actually quite extensive experience in working in Japanese TV. He is so they do all of these dramatic recreations of like American news stories and or like European news stories, stuff like that for Japanese audiences, and then a throne room of like celebrities will comment on the story and the dramatic recreation.
Clive has John Wayne Gacy, for example.
Yes, Clive has played John. He's been in blackface more than once, something you can't get away with unless you're the Prime Minister of our nation.
Me and Justin would have a lot to talk about. I think we can reminisce about our days in blackface. In my case, I played a Bangladeshi Air Force captain called Mahmood.
All right.
Only in Japan would they cast a Welshman. Although, you know what? The Welsh accent and the Indian accent have a certain sonorous... My wife used to think you were Indian when you would phone up. She's like, is that... No, it's Welsh. It's Welsh.
Oh, there we go.
I was also pleased to see Colin. In here as well.
Oh, there he is.
Another important Vancouver, and kind of almost of a generation. Certainly of a generation before me, and he'd be a bit older than you as well, Robin, right?
Yeah, I think he's almost 60 now.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat's yelling a lot, so I'm just trying to chill him out a little bit.
Was also pleased that you were willing to put your old work out there as well. I think that's a brave thing to do. I'm kind of skittish about letting some of the early stuff ever see light again. People are like, "Would you scan that and put it on?" I'm like,
well, I wanted to put my money where my mouth is, because I'm interviewing all these people and asking them to show me talk about their early work, and I'm like, well, if I'm not even brave enough to do it myself, then how can I ask them to do that? So
totally. And because there is that line, and especially with something like Rabid Rachel, where it is one of those comics that is on that side of like kind of rough around the edges, and and so it's pretty cool that somebody's willing to just, and I suppose if somebody, I wouldn't be rude. When we talked about meat markets, not always the most comfortable thing. It's like the fact that may be what goes on my tombstone.
That's what I love about those comics.
Co-writer of meat market.
They're created from such a position of passion. That they're not even willing to wait until they've got the technical chops. They've just got they want to get out there. And that's what we were talking about earlier, and that kind of folly of youth, and there's something kind of beautiful about that, and that I really respond to, and you can kind of feel it coming. It radiates off the page, even if it's not the most perfectly technically drawn thing. I still find those comics incredibly entertaining.
It's very punk, right? It's that thing of like it's that feeling of like, oh well, we can't pick up instruments because we're not
exactly.
We're not Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
You get what I'm saying?
Let's just get out there and get on a stage and make a noise and see what happens.
Exactly.
And it's the pencil and paper equivalent, I think.
Yeah, and I see people who write about these comics and they just, I don't know, there's that sort of YouTube thing where it's like, oh, I'll get lots of hits if I make fun of stuff, and I don't mind, poking fun at things, but it's got to be from a place of love. If you do it from a place of thinking you're better than the work that you're reviewing. I think it doesn't age well. You come off like an asshole, I think.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Would be the Emerson, Lake and Palmer or Genesis of comics.
Comics. I'll have to think about it. Who was doing epic stuff in the 70s?
Who were the boring post Sid Barrett Pink Floyd of comics? Like,
okay, that's a question we'll have to maybe answer in a future issue of.
So you did mention as well just randomly buying sight unseen stuff off eBay for the Eurocomic. So another thing I was kind of interested as well was how do you go about sourcing comics? Because I mean, I don't know how much of a thriving scene, especially in terms of old things lurking in the back of a comic shop. Does that still exist where you are? Are you still able to strike gold every now and again in your neighborhood, or do you have to go online? Or
well, I mean, the title of the comic really ties into that. The idea of being a gutter hunter. You're
right.
sort of searching. It's not something you could just, okay, I'm going to run down to the corner store and buy some, vintage indie comics. It's you got to be ready, and when you see them, you got to snag them. You may not. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. Maybe they'll be interesting later. It's that kind of thing,
right. Right. So do you find?
So I've got boxes of it, kind of like already, but occasionally, I want to fill gaps, so I got to go on eBay, or I've got to go on like this website or that website. I do mycomicshop.com and like various types of websites where I go looking for oddities and unusual. A lot of them I buy them directly from the creators. I'm a big believer in that as well, because I want people to do that with my work as well. So if I want people to do that with me, then again, I got to put my where my mouth is and support creators directly.
I'm just wondering, is it a bit of an end of an era in terms of, I mean, can you still find a lot of this stuff in the wild, or is that a window of time that's closing?
It's out there, because this stuff that I'm writing about is 90% of it is worth almost nothing. These are not collectors' comics. These are not something that you would buy because you think that it's going to, you're going to put your kids through college with it. Or a lot of vintage superhero comics, they actually do have value, and they do go up. They fluctuate in value if you get them slabbed or like whatever. Nobody's slabbing these comics. Nobody's slabbing Rabid Rachel.
Right. I suppose my
question, are comics that you would buy only because you were interested in actually reading them.
I suppose my question is more, not so much that they would be valuable no matter your price range, but I'm just wondering if there's a case
that's what I'm referring to. The fact that they don't have any value makes them easier to get.
No. I understand that, but what I mean is, but the other thing that can happen as well along that continuum is like, because it has no value, a creator dies or something, and they just end up in a landfill. So
that is a problem.
Avenues for these comics to get out there, where even if do they still exist?
Well, yeah, when you do find them, they're always either like in dollar bins or but yeah, what you mentioned is an issue where they're so undervalued that sometimes they get destroyed, or they get chucked out, or that kind of thing.
So we may have lost some comics. I've always had this image of, I thought it would make a good film. I always had the image that the greatest novel ever written in any language is, some guy wrote it in his shed and he was this close to completing it, and then he died, and then it was just thrown away or something. And
probably true.
Because yes, Clive's terror. We used to talk about, he would just freak out about all of the films that burned up in Dresden, during the firebombing. Like, you can't see them now. Like, Clive, you have to let some stuff go.
Well, it's the same thing with the vintage porn, where it's not considered of value by historians. So there is a lot of vintage magazines and movies where we may have lost some of them, where
I could have a complete collection of Jaybird, I would be happy.
I know there's some movies where the only thing that exists still is the poster.
Right. I mean, obviously there's people like Vinegar Syndrome and stuff doing a good job rescuing
Alpha Blue as well.
Yeah. And
but
as for magazines, there's a website called Adult Load, and people are upping vintage magazine
scans of the stuff. But I was gonna say, this is completely a lateral move, or if that even makes sense. Anyway, I was thinking one of the things I quite like about what you're doing right now is, you will bring it back to stuff that's going on in the culture right now, and we're at a very strange place.
Yeah.
In nerd culture, And I had this experience like a few weeks ago where I was like, I almost had an out of body experience as this happened in my classroom, right? I teach grade 6, and I've got a very strongly, wonderfully, I mean, I don't know if we are allowed to use words like geek or nerd anymore, but like a core group of kids in my class that's like more than half almost, who like, I mean, I'm running Dungeons and Dragons after school. I haven't played D&D since I was 16 myself, or 15, with a group of 12-year-olds who are like super into it. And I'm like, anyway, I want to get into it. I won't get into how bad it's gotten in terms of how deeply I've gone down that hole again after so many years of not being anywhere close to that world. But I had to kind of yell at some kids because they were mocking the jocks in my class because he made a mistake when referring to like the Guardians of the Galaxy. He got it kind of mixed up with Star Wars, and they were like, "Pwah!" Like, you moron. And I was like, whoa, don't bully the sports kids.
Yeah.
Because they don't have your esoteric knowledge of Marvel and Star Wars. I was like, this is what's happening.
I talked about that in an issue of CinemaSoar where I talked about the name of the article was the geeks have inherited the earth.
Yeah.
Where the comics that I used to read, you know,
and the whole gatekeeping culture and that whole,
yeah.
I mean, like, I find it very toxic.
Well,
and frustrating.
Nick, you mentioned the fall earlier, and yeah, as Mackie Smith sang in one of his songs, you know, they say, what about the meek? I say they got a bloody cheek.
I guess, yeah, they were just waiting for their turn to, you know, turn screws or whatever.
What annoys me as well is poser geeks is the one that annoys me. Like, if anyone ever says, "Oh, I'm such a geek, I know everything about Star Wars," and I'm like, no, fuck you. Star Wars is not geek culture. Everyone in the world watches fucking Star Wars now. You missed your boat.
It's the mainstream. Yeah, it's the mainstream. Yeah.
You have to, watch some German scat porn and then come back.
I demand it.
Yeah.
And then you become the bully then. Yeah.
You can see why my family name is not attached to any of this stuff.
No, I've retitled the show Presents Comics.
Well, thanks for saying it out loud now.
I'll bleep it out, don't worry, if I remember.
Which he won't. The number of times he's like, don't worry, we'll cut that piece out. And then, no, it's in the show. Anyway, but yeah, no, it's just a strange thing. And then, you know, I don't know. And just the increasing amount of like, just weird, like white supremacy, all these awful, toxic, disgusting things, you know, just like rampant homophobia, rampant whatever else you want to say, sexism, stuff like that. That seems to now be kind of glommed onto portions of, you know, cultures that should know better. I feel like, it's
a strange time to be alive.
Yeah, it's gross.
I also wanted to talk about, I really like this spread.
Oh, yeah. You're the first person to comment on it, actually.
This is I like this a lot because it's you were talking about putting yourself on the page, and also to my first question when I was going back about like making comics and then doing journalism about comics. I was wondering if does that feed into, because for instance, I'm very much a frustrated filmmaker who writes about films as a way of kind of getting close to, because it's such hard work to try and do that stuff by yourself with no money. So I'm wondering, this strikes me as an interesting dichotomy, where on the one hand you think you're doing great work, and then on the next it seems very much like a frustrated comic artist, like, who the fuck am I kidding? And does that feed into that comics versus journalism comics thing?
Well, yeah, that piece is called he's faking it, he's a fraud, and then he's making it, he's a god. A god. What I wanted to address with that was sort of the feelings of, there's a sort of a duality that happens when you're a creator, at least for all the ones I know anyway, where sometimes when you're making the work, you feel so energized and so excited about what you're making. You get a euphoria, or you feel so excited, and you're like, oh, this is like, you know, the energy you need to keep pushing forward. You know, when you're having problems, staying motivated, it's the thing that pushes you forward. And then you have other times when you're sitting there at the art desk and you know, they call it, you know, imposter syndrome, where, and I think everybody deals with it. And a lot of people, you know, they feel ashamed, and they don't even want to talk about that because, you know, they really kind of believe it. It's that little voice in their head that's telling them they're, you know, they're fucking awful, and why do they even bother, and you know, all these feelings of you know, kind of like shame and inadequacy, and I just wanted to sort of address the fact that that's a normal part of creating. Those are feelings that come over you, you know, sometimes twice in one sitting, you know, like and by showing the same page drawn just with slight differences, it sort of ties into the idea that I haven't changed at all, but my entire perception of myself and the work I make, it changes entirely.
Right. I think we're always vacillating between those two kind of extremes. Like, and yeah, I mean, and I don't think it matters how successful you get as well. I think the most successful artists, the most successful filmmakers are constantly struggling with that same sense of like, I'm not as good as I want to be. I'm never going to be as good as I want to be.
Yeah.
Or I'm never going to be as good as this other person who I idolized when I was young, and you know, and they were feeling exactly the same thing when they were creating their art. Was, you know.
So I think when you're younger, you assume at a certain point, you know, when I reach a certain point, I'll finally get the confidence and this level out. And then
it only comes from massive cocaine abuse. I think that's when you're like, everything I touch turns to gold. You know, you're like,
and that's when it turns to shit.
And that's when you're making your worst work, inevitably. That's your worst album, your worst movie. It's always when you're
all you really gain is the ability to mask it. You don't really, I find you don't really ever lose those types of things. But I mean, the trick is to listen to yourself when you're telling yourself that you're doing great work, and try not to listen so much. That's really all you can do.
Yeah, and resign yourself to the fact that even when you're 95 years old, you'll be like 1 minute on a Zimmer frame, like fucking, and then you'll be, I'm the king of the world. In fact, you know, I can fuck teenage girls all day long, and then the next, fuck, I just shut my pants, and you know, it's not going away, right?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about that thing, maybe hoping that it's a universal experience, or I mean, maybe it's not for some people. Maybe some people are, you know.
I think it is for all. I'd be very surprised if there's any creative person out there who doesn't have those moments of crippling self-doubt and those moments of like,
and if there is, we hate them. So
screw that person if you exist out there somewhere.
Maybe that's what it is to be a narcissist, like the Donald Trumps of this world. Maybe they don't ever have a moment where they have self-doubt. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he does.
True enough. Yeah. But what a toxic asshole.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe it's better. Maybe that's a healthy thing to have.
His daughter's not.
If Teutonic does it for you, I guess.
Ilsa, man. She's Ilsa. She will.
Okay, yeah, I guess you're into the Diane Thorns of the world. But yeah, no, I'm finding this tremendously inspiring. And the other thing that I think comes up occasionally that's really interesting to me is this notion of like, well, you know, is my work legitimate if somebody else isn't publishing it? You know, like, is self-publishing like a legitimate thing? And of course it is, right? Putting your work into the world, however it gets into the world, is really, really important. If we waited for those gatekeepers, you know, we might never see print, right? We may never see the light of day because we don't know the right people. I mean, I didn't go to the right schools. I'm not a rich kid, you know. I didn't have all of those things going for me. I mean, I had most of them. I'm white, I'm male, I'm cisgender. Like, you know, like I had 5 out of 6 when I rolled the dice. I just didn't get rich.
You did well. You did well.
But yeah, I did pretty good, so I can't complain. But you know, I think that. But then there's another part of me that's like I'm scared shitless to actually. I've got 4 novels in drawers here that are okay, maybe, but I'm too scared to get told that they're not as good as I hope they might be, and that's so crappy. Like
at least 2 of them I read.
What am I doing? Sorry.
At least 2 that I read, I think.
Well, there you go. Yeah, Clive's read 2, and that's about it. And you know, I just it's a little bit frustrating to me that I keep thinking, no, it's not the right time, or it's not perfect yet. And it's that thing of like,
it won't ever be perfect.
It's not perfect work. It's never going to be. I know that.
Yeah.
But some part of me, some 47-year-old sad part of me, I think I was braver at 18 or 19, and the work was terrible. And I was like, look at my terrible work, world. Yeah. And now it's probably
try to tap into that again, because that's what's going to get you through the tough times in terms of that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Gareth from Gareth, how do I say his last? Is it Gowden?
I think it's Gowden,
back in the day. I don't know if I've ever said his last name, but anyway, Gareth challenged me on Facebook a while ago to just start doing comics again.
I was so happy to see them.
20 something years of basically not. And so the only reason I had to put a pause on it was because I got completely swamped by work. But I'm going to get back this summer as soon as I'm free. And I'm going to try to go the next year. I'm going to try to go. I hope
you do, because I was enjoying them a great deal as well.
Yeah, they were fun.
It's been a long, it's strange for me. It's been so long since I've done, I mean, I kept drawing, but I haven't really.
I particularly enjoyed seeing myself as a Basil Wolverton drawing.
Well, it's obvious that you've kept drawing, because I thought your skill level was great. So
that's very kind. I don't know if I agree, but anyway, but yeah, it's fun. It was fun to just share anything with the world again after so long of kind of not, and being like, yeah, you know, it's kind of nice when people are like, yeah, that's not bad. Or
did you get a good reaction from it?
Yeah, I mean, I did, from everybody, from my own family to people I barely know. So
that's great.
So yeah, the next step might be to just produce enough work to then actually publish it in some form.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking I'm happy. I might even look around maybe here on the island. The Maritimes is a bit more open that way, because we have smaller publishers and kind of you can get to know people. And then we've got, you know, Ed out there in Halifax now. But I'm not looking for a job with Marvel, I don't think. I don't think I'd be a good fit.
You're juggling about a dozen podcasts to keep you
thanks to Clive here and
keep you busy as well.
What are we watching? The entire run of some Flash Gordon serial soon for like the 8th podcast we're doing. Anyway, but to bring it all back to Gutter Hunters, everyone, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're somebody's grandmother. I don't care if you're a 6-year-old child. Maybe not if you're 6.
We're all holding them.
You need to get Gutter Hunter if you care at all about comics.
That could be the screen grab.
You need you need to get yourself a copy, and you need, you know, one thing I wondered about, because I know you sell stuff through. Where do actually let's talk about this right now. Where does one go to get Robin's stuff?
Well, you can contact me on my various social media pages. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, and all under Robin Bougie, Bougie, and my online store is cinemasewer.storeenvy.com. And
that's, I guess you can put mine from.
Yeah, so when you buy them there, you directly support me and my ability to keep printing them. So I highly recommend doing it that way. My collected books are also on Amazon and via my. But it's better to buy them directly from me or my publisher, Fab Press.
You get a lovely personalized stamp.
Yeah, there's my cat. Yeah. Oh wait, this way. Yeah.
I did wonder whether or not, you know, because I almost thought, like, if I could subscribe, I would to Gutter Hunter. I would send you money or just like take money out of my credit card account when it comes out. But is that something that you've ever thought about, or because you're not sure about scheduling?
Yeah, I did that for a little while with CinemaSewer, but I got uncomfortable taking people's money and then thinking, oh God, what if something comes up and I can't, and then I'd have to find them and refund their money, or so. Yeah. I don't know. It just, maybe I should, but for right now, sales are fine without it.
We're friends on Facebook anyway, so I will see when new things come out. So that helps. So everyone, if you care, again, maybe, are you okay with random people friending you on your social media?
I love it.
Okay, all right. So everyone, find Robin on Facebook or wherever else you can find him, and then you'll be in the know.
I was curious, do you have any other customers in Japan yet?
I think it's you and one other person that buy regularly.
Okay.
See, I used to pick up your stuff from Tower Records. Is Tower Records even still there, Clive, or is it one of those like dying things? Like,
I think the one in Shibuya near Pisali closed down. Shibuya's still there, I think.
I used to go there to pick up the Fab Press, my Fab Press copies of CinemaSewer, because the first couple of books came out when I was still over there.
I used to sell
the first one, which had stuff about things that I was involved in writing.
Yeah.
And then many years later, we recorded a podcast where I made a humble apology to Barry J. Gillis and everyone else involved for having been such a prick in that review.
Do check
Because
out
here's the
our
thing.
National
This is a great
Canada
example.
Day things episode.
He was thrilled. He was thrilled with that review. So I don't.
Well, yeah,
think
no,
he
I
was-
mean, it did. Oh, yeah, I mean, they when they reeditioned the DVD,
Yeah.
it was on the front. I was like, why would they? Anyway, but the funny thing is, what I realized it kind of was that thing though of what we were talking about before about like crapping on something in a way to make yourself seem above it, and then within a year or two, I'd made probably a worse movie and put it out into the world, and then saw reviews of it online, and we're like, ooh, that stings a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's how it feels. Oh.
Yeah. So that's a good experience to have. But more importantly, I realized like I will never watch what's that Tom Hanks movie where he plays the guy with a mental problem?
Forrest
Gump.
Forrest Gump. Yeah.
Forrest Gump.
I will never I will never watch Oscar-winning Forrest Gump again in my entire life. Never, unless I'm like held down and forced to in that machine from Clockwork Orange. But
that's the next podcast then.
okay. But I have watched things now over 20 times.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, hang on, I need to go back and address that initial review, because you don't return something 20 times unless I'm like an abused husband or whatever.
I think you kind of are in this case. I think you might be.
I might be, yeah. But it gets better every time. I'm just like, this is like, it is that comic. It is that comic we're talking about. That it is Magistrate, right?
Yeah.
Which I seem to remember now vaguely. Might have even had a like that. That's one thing we didn't talk about. But those very strange, like religious comics. I remember my wife telling me once, and my wife, like you and your wife, we go back to high school basically. But her telling me that she had been buying a bunch of Archie comics from some actually from my friend Tavis's secondhand bookstore in Penticton.
Yeah.
And in amongst them were these religious Archies, where every second panel, Jughead is suddenly quoting from Leviticus and stuff, and she's like, "Wow, what the hell are these?" Like
Spire Christian Comics. Yeah, they had a deal with Al Hartley of Archie. Yeah.
The Passion of Jughead.
Yes. But it was like stealth. It was like stealth because they looked like, she
they looked exactly
as a kid, mistook them for legitimate Archie comics, and then was my wife's fairly atheist, just to say the least.
Well,
so she was.
Al Hartley at the time was the regular artist at Archie, and he was an extremely religious man. And he branched off and started up his own publishing wing, and he managed to convince his bosses at Archie to let him take the characters and publish them. I have no idea how he did that. This is back in the 70s, when these corporations, weren't so strict about these types of things and about their IPs, and so they were like, go ahead, use Archie to get people indoctrinated into the church.
Your Jack T. Chick tracts that you're gonna stealth put in the comic bin at the secondhand bookstore. So my wife is
we're about to be
blindsided.
Short of hopefully your house not blowing up and your entire extended family dying and therefore expediting volume 3. In normal times, when might we expect a Gutter Hunter 3, Robin, do you think?
I'd like to get it out in the early part of next year, so 2023.
Okay.
So that's my hope, is sometime in January, February, March.
And if anyone wants to get the first issue, are they sold out or are they still not?
No, I did my very first reprinting of any zine I've ever done with the first issue.
I would have my first issue if you hadn't.
Yeah, it sold out in just a few days, the first printing. So I figured, that's not fair to people who wanted to get it. So I underestimated how many people would want it. So, which was a good problem to have. So
how about the second one? Did the second one sell out also?
No, I printed quite a bit more, so I still have quite a few.
Okay.
And there's plenty of. I am starting to get low on the first issue, second printing, and I'm not planning on doing a third printing. So people shouldn't dawdle too much on that first issue. But still got quite a bit of the second issue, and it should get me to at least the third or fourth issue before starts running out. So
well, hopefully this extremely influential and popular YouTube video will have
7 people could see this.
At least
2
more purchases.
You know what? Every little bit helps, and I didn't do it for anything. Just to hang out with you guys was fun. So That's the
Um,
reason.
fun. This was
yeah,
fun, actually.
it was awesome to see you again after so long. And yeah, I'd be happy to anytime you have something that you want to shill to the world. We'd love to have you back.
Sounds good.
And
Tons of
more
fun.
than that as well, even if you just if you feel like either recommending something that we do talk about on this show, you know, you're quite welcome.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, yeah. If
And
there's a
also
comic that
join
you
us to
think we
talk
should
about it if
read,
you so desire.
Cool.
we
Okay.
also have a show called Film Crack. The middle crack is spelt in the Irish, like it's a good bit of crack. About lost or semi-lost movies. If there's something that you're like, oh yeah, the world needs to see this thing that, you know, you can only get on a VHS tape from Greece or whatever with like burned in subs.
You should come here as well.
We do a little thing about that. We have a little show where we talk about stuff like that, and we have one where we just talk about novels. So yeah, we're always happy to have people on if they have a request, and we'll read or watch whatever it is and then chat about it. It's
cool. I'll keep it in mind.
Fun.
Yeah.
Once again, go get
yes.
the
Yeah, I guess
it will please both the little head and the big head.
I guess you'll have a link to my online store there.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That'd be perfect.
Okay, doc then. Until next time, and thank you once again, Robin. It's been a delight.
Yay!